Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terran warship Valiant, staring at the message that had just arrived. He read it 3 times to make sure he understood correctly. The words seemed impossible, yet there they were on the screen in front of him. He was being invited to a royal wedding. An alien royal wedding. "This has to be a mistake," Jake said to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Katie Walsh. She stood beside him, reading the same message with wide eyes. "It's no mistake, sir," Katie replied. "The invitation comes directly from King Voran of the Kelvari Empire. It's addressed to you, specifically." Jake ran a hand through his dark hair and let out a long breath. 3 months ago, he had saved the life of a Kelvari prince during a fight with space pirates near the border zone. The prince's ship had been damaged and under heavy fire. Jake had risked his own vessel to pull the prince and his crew to safety. It had been the right thing to do. Nothing more. He never expected anything to come from it. But apparently, the Kelvari remembered favors. "Princess Sienna is getting married," Katie continued, reading more of the message. "She's the king's second daughter. The wedding will take place on Kelvar Prime, their home world. They want you there as an honored guest." Jake felt his stomach tighten. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. He knew how to fight, how to command troops, how to make split-second decisions in combat. But attending an alien royal wedding? That was completely different territory. "Can I refuse?" he asked. Katie shook her head. Admiral Bennett already sent a reply. "You're going. He says this is too important for human-Kelvari relations. We need to maintain good ties with the Empire." "Great," Jake muttered. "When do we leave?" 2 days. You can bring 1 guest. The Admiral suggested I accompany you as your communications officer." Jake nodded. At least he wouldn't be completely alone in this. Katie was smart and good at reading situations. If anyone could help him avoid making a fool of himself at an alien wedding, it was her. 2 days later, they arrived at Kelvar Prime. Jake had seen many alien worlds during his years in the Defense Corps, but this one took his breath away. The planet gleamed like a jewel in space, with vast oceans and continents covered in strange, beautiful cities. As their shuttle descended toward the capital, Jake could see towers that seemed to float in the air, connected by bridges of pure light. The palace was even more impressive. It rose from the center of the city like a mountain made of crystal and metal. Gardens floated around it, defying gravity, filled with plants that glowed in colors Jake had never seen before. Waterfalls flowed upward instead of down. The whole place felt like something from a dream. "Remember," Katie said as they walked toward the palace entrance, "the Kelvari are a warrior culture. They value strength and honor above all else. Be respectful, but don't act weak. They don't like that." Jake nodded. He could handle that. Respect and strength were things he understood. A tall Kelvari guard met them at the entrance. The alien stood at least 7 feet tall, with silver-blue skin and eyes that seemed to glow with an inner light. He wore armor that looked both ceremonial and functional, covered in symbols Jake didn't recognize. "Captain Morrison," the guard said, in perfect English. "Welcome to the House of Voran. The king is pleased you accepted his invitation." "The honor is mine," Jake replied, hoping that was the right thing to say. The guard led them through corridors filled with other guests. Jake saw aliens from at least a dozen different species, all dressed in elaborate clothes. He felt underdressed in his formal military uniform, even though Katie had assured him it was appropriate. The pre-wedding celebration was already underway in a huge hall. Music filled the air. Strange and beautiful. Guests mingled, drank, and talked in various languages. Jake spotted Prince Dalvin across the room, the one he had saved. The prince saw him too, and raised a glass in salute. "Stay close," Jake whispered to Katie. "I have no idea what I'm doing here. Just smile and be polite," she whispered back. "And whatever you do, don't insult anyone." That turned out to be harder than it sounded. Jake was trying to navigate through the crowd when he collided with someone. Drinks spilled. He turned quickly to apologize and found himself face to face with a Kelvari woman who made the guards look small. She stood tall and powerful, with the same silver-blue skin but with markings on her face that seemed to glow. Her eyes were sharp and cold as she looked down at him. "Watch where you're going, human," she said, her voice like ice. "I apologize," Jake said quickly. "I didn't see you, clearly." She looked him up and down with obvious disdain. "You must be the one who saved my fool brother from the pirates." Jake realized who he was talking to. This had to be someone important. "I just did what anyone would do." "Anyone with honor," she corrected. "Though I question your manners. Do you know who I am?" Jake felt his temper rise. He didn't like her tone, royal or not. Should I? Her eyes flashed with anger. Several nearby guests gasped and stepped back. Katie grabbed Jake's arm, her face pale. "Sir," Katie whispered urgently, "that's Princess Helena, the king's eldest daughter." Jake felt his stomach drop. He had just insulted the crown princess. Perfect way to start the visit. Princess Helena stared at him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, her lips curved into a small smile. "At least you have courage. Most humans I've met can barely look me in the eye." "I don't scare easily," Jake replied. "We'll see about that." She turned and walked away, her long coat flowing behind her like a cape. Katie let out a breath. That could have gone worse. Could it? Jake watched the princess disappear into the crowd. "I think I just made an enemy of the future queen." "Maybe," Katie said. "Or maybe you impressed her. It's hard to tell with Kelvari royalty." The rest of the evening passed without major incident. Jake met Princess Sienna, the bride, who was much friendlier than her sister. She was smaller, softer spoken, and seemed genuinely happy to meet him. Her fiancé, Lord Theron, was polite, but distant. Jake couldn't quite read him. As the celebration continued, Jake found himself watching Princess Helena from across the room. She moved through the crowd with absolute confidence, speaking to nobles and warriors alike. People clearly respected her, maybe even feared her. She was nothing like any woman he had ever met, human or alien. "Stop staring," Katie said, appearing beside him with fresh drinks. "You're being obvious." "I'm not staring," Jake protested. "I'm observing." "Sure you are," Katie smiled. "Just be careful. She's way out of your league." Jake laughed. But he couldn't quite shake the image of those cold, glowing eyes staring into his. He had come to this planet for a simple diplomatic mission: attend a wedding, smile for the cameras, and go home. But something told him things weren't going to be that simple. He had no idea how right he was. The wedding was scheduled to begin in 2 days. Jake planned to stay in the background, observe the ceremony, and leave as quietly as possible. He would avoid Princess Helena, be polite to everyone else, and not cause any more problems. It was a good plan. Unfortunately, fate had other ideas. The second day of celebrations started peacefully enough. Jake had managed to avoid any more awkward encounters with Princess Helena. He and Katie attended the morning rituals, watching as Kelvari priests blessed the union with ancient ceremonies that neither of them fully understood. "This is actually beautiful," Katie whispered, as they watched dancers perform in the courtyard. The dancers moved in complex patterns, their bodies painted with glowing symbols that left trails of light in the air. Jake had to agree. Whatever else he thought about this mission, the Kelvari knew how to throw a wedding. The entire palace had been transformed into a celebration of color and light. Music played constantly. Guests from across the galaxy mingled and celebrated together. The main feast was scheduled for midday in the Great Hall. Jake and Katie found their seats near the middle of the massive room. Thousands of guests filled the space, sitting at long tables that stretched from one end to the other. At the head of the hall, on a raised platform, sat the royal family. King Vorin looked old but strong, with silver hair and the same glowing eyes all Kelvari seemed to have. Princess Sienna sat beside her father, dressed in a gown that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Lord Theron sat on her other side, looking proud and confident. Princess Helena sat at the far end, watching everything with those sharp, calculating eyes. The feast began with a speech from the king. Jake didn't understand most of it, as it was given in the Kelvari language, but the meaning was clear enough. This was a joyous occasion, a union between two powerful families, a promise of peace and prosperity. Servants brought food and drink. Jake tried dishes he couldn't identify, some delicious and others barely edible to his human palate. Katie seemed to be enjoying herself, chatting with the alien guests seated near them. Then everything went wrong. It happened so fast that Jake almost missed it. Lord Theron stood up as if to make a toast. He raised his glass high, but instead of speaking, he suddenly threw the glass aside and pulled out a weapon. The blade gleamed in the light as he turned toward King Voron. Jake didn't think. He reacted on pure instinct, the same instinct that had kept him alive through dozens of combat situations. He launched himself from his seat, racing toward the platform. Other guards were moving too, but Jake was closer. Theron's blade came down toward the king's chest. Jake hit the traitor from the side like a missile, driving him away from the platform. They crashed together onto the floor, rolling and fighting. The great hall erupted in chaos. Guests screamed and scattered. Guards rushed forward. Theron was strong, far stronger than any human should be. But Jake had trained in zero-gravity combat, in hand-to-hand fighting, in every condition imaginable. He used Theron's momentum against him, rolling and striking at vulnerable points. The fight was brutal and quick. Theron managed to slice Jake's arm with the blade, drawing blood. Jake responded by breaking the traitor's wrist, forcing him to drop the weapon. Then he drove his fist into Theron's face once, twice, 3 times until the alien went limp. "Stay down," Jake growled, pinning him to the floor. Guards surrounded them, weapons drawn. Princess Helena appeared above Jake, her own sword out and ready. She looked down at the unconscious Theron with pure disgust. "Traitor," she spat. "Take him to the dungeons." As guards dragged Theron away, Jake became aware of the blood running down his arm and the pain starting to set in. He had acted without thinking, and now he wondered if he had just made everything worse. King Voron stood at the edge of the platform, his face dark with anger. "What is the meaning of this, Father?" Princess Helena said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Lord Theron attempted to assassinate you." This human stopped him. The king's eyes found Jake. For a moment, Jake thought he saw gratitude there. But then, the king's gaze shifted to something behind Jake, and his expression changed to one of horror. Jake turned and saw what the king was looking at. On the floor, shattered into 1,000 pieces, lay what looked like crystals. They had been sitting on a pedestal near the royal table. In the chaos of the fight, that pedestal had been knocked over. "The bonding crystals," someone whispered. The word spread through the hall like wildfire. Princess Sienna rushed forward, falling to her knees beside the broken crystals. She touched the fragments with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. "No, no, no, no." "What happened?" Katie asked, appearing beside Jake. She looked at his bleeding arm with concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Jake said, though his arm hurt like hell. "But I think I broke something important." That turned out to be an understatement. The celebration came to an immediate halt. Priests rushed forward to examine the broken crystals, but there was nothing to be done. Whatever they had been, they were destroyed beyond repair. Princess Sienna wept openly while her ladies tried to comfort her. King Voron's voice boomed across the hall. "The sacred union cannot proceed. The crystals are destroyed. This wedding is ended." A collective gasp went through the crowd. Jake felt his chest tighten. He had stopped an assassination, yes, but in doing so, he had apparently destroyed the wedding itself. Guards took Jake to a side chamber to treat his wound. Katie came with him, along with Princess Helena. The princess dismissed everyone else, leaving just the 3 of them in the room. "That was foolish," Helena said, but her tone wasn't angry. "He was going to stab your father," Jake replied as a medical drone worked on his arm. "I couldn't just watch." "No. I suppose you couldn't." Helena sat down across from him, studying his face. "You react on instinct, like a true warrior. I'm just a soldier doing his job." "You saved the king's life," Helena said. "That means something to our people. More than you realize." Katie looked between them, frowning. "What does it mean, exactly?" Helena was quiet for a moment. "There is an ancient law, one that hasn't been invoked in over a century. The right of combat resolution." "What's that?" Jake asked. "When a warrior defends a royal wedding with blood and victory, that warrior enters into a sacred bond with the crown. Any unmarried member of the royal family can claim that warrior as their consort." Helena's glowing eyes fixed on Jake. "It's the highest honor our people can bestow." Jake felt his blood run cold. "Wait. Are you saying what I think you're saying?" I'm saying that you, Captain Morrison, are now eligible to be claimed in marriage by any unmarried royal." Helena leaned back in her chair. "And as the eldest unmarried daughter of the king, I have the first right to make that claim." Katie's mouth fell open. "You can't be serious." "I am completely serious," Helena said. "The Council of Elders will meet tonight to discuss this matter. If I choose to invoke the right of combat resolution, you will become my husband. There is no appeal, no refusal. It is law." Jake stood up, his treated arm still aching. "This is crazy. I can't just marry someone I don't even know. That's not how humans do things." "You're not on a human world anymore," Helena reminded him. "Here, you follow our laws and our traditions." "I saved your father's life," Jake said, his voice rising. "And this is how you repay me? By forcing me into marriage?" Helena stood as well, meeting his anger with her own. "You think this is what I want? I have spent my entire life refusing marriage, refusing to be seen as just some nobleman's prize. But you have put yourself into this position through your own actions. Now, we both must deal with the consequences." She walked to the door, then paused and looked back. "The council meets at sunset. I will make my decision then. I suggest you use the time to understand what you've gotten yourself into." Then she was gone, leaving Jake and Katie alone, in stunned silence. "This can't be happening," Jake said, sinking back into his chair. "Tell me, this isn't happening." Katie's face was pale. "I think it is. I think you just accidentally proposed to an alien princess. I didn't propose to anyone. Try telling that to the Kelvari." Katie started pacing. "We need to contact Admiral Bennett. We need diplomatic support. Maybe we can find a way out of this." But even as she said it, Jake knew there was no easy way out. He had saved the king's life and destroyed a wedding in the process. Now, the Kelvari had their own ideas about how to resolve the situation. He looked down at his bandaged arm and wondered how a simple diplomatic mission had turned into such a nightmare. He had come to this planet as a guest. Now he might leave as a husband to the future queen of the Kelvari Empire. The universe, Jake decided, had a twisted sense of humor. Jake spent the next 3 hours in his guest quarters, trying to make sense of his situation. Katie had contacted Admiral Bennett immediately, and the response had been swift but not helpful. The Admiral was sending Ambassador Lauren Mitchell to handle negotiations. But she wouldn't arrive for at least 2 days. 2 days might be too late. "The council meeting starts in an hour," Katie said, checking her tablet. "Princess Helena will announce her decision then." Jake paced back and forth across the room. His arm still ached where Theron's blade had cut him. The medical drone had sealed the wound, but it would take time to heal fully. There has to be a way out of this. I can't just marry someone because some ancient law says so. "Actually, you can," said a new voice. Both Jake and Katie turned to see Prince Dalvin standing in the doorway. The prince looked serious, all traces of his usual friendly manner gone. "May I come in?" he asked. Jake nodded. Your sister told me about this law. It's real, Dalvin confirmed, entering the room and closing the door behind him. I've been researching it since this morning. The law was created over 500 years ago, during the War of Three Kingdoms. It was meant to forge alliances through marriage after great battles. But this wasn't a battle, Jake protested. I just stopped one guy from killing your father. You shed blood defending a royal wedding, Dalvin said. By our law, that's enough. The crystals being destroyed only made it worse. Now there's a debt that must be paid. Katie sat down heavily. So, what are Jake's options? Dalvin hesitated. Honestly, not many. If Helena invokes the claim, and Jake refuses, it would be seen as a grave insult. The kind of insult that could damage relations between our peoples for generations. So I'm trapped, Jake said flatly. Not exactly. Dalvin walked to the window, looking out at the floating gardens. You could accept the marriage, but negotiate the terms. Calvary marriages, especially royal ones, are often political arrangements. They don't have to be based on love or even mutual affection. They're about duty and honor. Jake felt a headache building behind his eyes. I don't want a political marriage. I don't want any marriage right now. Two. What you want and what you must do are sometimes different things, Dalvin said. I speak from experience. My own marriage was arranged when I was young. I had no choice in the matter. I know Castor. Ozer. How did that work out? Katie asked. Dalvin smiled sadly. My wife died 3 years ago in a border conflict. We never had children, but we respected each other. And in time, we became friends. It was enough. Jake didn't find that particularly comforting, but he appreciated Dalvin's honesty. Tell me about your sister. The real Helena. Not the public version. Dalvin considered the question carefully. Helena is the strongest person I know. She's been training to rule since she was a child. Our father has always been hard on her, harder than he was on Sienna or me. He knew she would inherit the throne, so he made sure she could handle it. She doesn't seem like someone who wants a husband, Jake observed. She doesn't, Dalvin agreed. Helena has refused every suitor our father has presented. She believes marriage would make her appear weak, that the nobles would see her husband as the true power behind the throne. She spent years proving herself as a warrior and a leader. A forced marriage would undermine all of that. Then why would she invoke this claim? Katie asked. Because you've given her a unique opportunity, Dalvin said, looking at Jake. A marriage to a human war hero. Someone who saved our father's life would strengthen her position instead of weakening it. It would show the council that she's capable of making strategic alliances. And since you're not Kelvari, you couldn't challenge her right to rule. Jake rubbed his face, trying to think. This is insane. Welcome to royal politics, Dalvin said. I should go. The council will be gathering soon. Jake, whatever happens, know that I'm grateful for what you did. You saved my father's life. That debt can never be fully repaid. After Dalvin left, Jake and Katie sat in silence for a long moment. What are you going to do? Katie finally asked. I don't know, Jake admitted. Part of me wants to refuse, to get on a ship and leave this planet. But that would cause a diplomatic disaster. Admiral Bennett would probably have my head. And the other part? Katie prompted. Jake thought about Princess Helena, about her sharp eyes and sharper tongue, about the way she had looked at him with something that might have been respect. The other part thinks maybe this doesn't have to be a complete disaster. If we're both trapped in this situation, maybe we can make it work for both of us. You're actually considering it, Katie said, sounding surprised. I'm considering not making things worse, Jake corrected. There's a difference. An hour later, Jake found himself in the council chamber. The room was circular, with high ceilings and walls covered in ancient carvings. The council of elders sat in a semicircle, 15 Kelvari nobles in elaborate robes. King Voron sat at the center, with Princess Helena standing beside him. Princess Sienna was there too, looking miserable. Jake and Katie stood in the center of the circle, feeling very much on display. "We are gathered to address the matter of Captain Jake Morrison," King Voron announced, his voice echoing in the chamber. "He has invoked the right of combat resolution. Whether he meant to or not, my daughter Helena has the first claim. We are here to witness her decision." Helena stepped forward. She had changed into formal armor, looking every bit the warrior princess. Her eyes found Jake's across the chamber. "I invoke my right," she said clearly. "I claim Captain Morrison as my consort." The chamber erupted in whispers. Jake felt his stomach drop, even though he had been expecting this. "However," Helena continued, raising her voice over the noise, "I acknowledge that Captain Morrison is not Kelvari. He does not know our ways. Therefore, I propose we allow negotiations on the terms of this union." King Voron frowned. "That is unusual." "These are unusual circumstances, Father," Helena replied. "Captain Morrison saved your life. The least we can do is hear what he has to say." The king considered this, then nodded. "Very well. Captain Morrison, you may speak." Jake stepped forward, his heart pounding. He had faced enemy fire without flinching, but speaking to a room full of alien nobles terrified him. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I'm honored by Princess Helena's claim, but I need to understand what this marriage would mean, for both of us." "It means you become part of the royal family," one of the council members said. "You would have duties to fulfill, ceremonies to attend, and expectations to meet." "And my career in the Terran Defense Corps?" Jake asked. "That would need to be discussed," another council member replied. "You cannot serve two militaries." Jake had expected that. "Then I have a proposal. I will accept this marriage, but I want it to be a partnership, not a political arrangement where I'm just a trophy. If Princess Helena wants me as her husband, then she needs to respect me as an equal." "Impossible," several council members said at once, but Helena held up her hand for silence. "Let him finish." Jake met her eyes. "I want clear terms. A contract that outlines what's expected from both of us. I'll attend ceremonies and fulfill royal duties, but I keep my voice. I keep my right to speak my mind. And if after 5 years we both agree this isn't working, we can end it honorably." The chamber fell silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Finally, Helena spoke. "You want a marriage with an exit clause." "I want a marriage where both of us have a choice," Jake said. "You didn't ask for this any more than I did. But if we're going to do this, let's do it honestly, not as strangers forced together by law, but as partners who agree to try." Helena walked toward him, closing the distance between them. Up close, Jake could see the complexity in her eyes. She wasn't just a cold warrior princess. There was intelligence there, and calculation, and something that might have been uncertainty. 5 years, she said quietly, so only he could hear. "You would agree to stay married to me for 5 years? Even if you hate every moment of it?" "I would agree to try to make it work for 5 years, Jake corrected. "That's all I can promise." "No." Helena studied his face for a long moment. Then she turned back to the council. "I accept his terms. We will have a contract drawn up outlining the expectations and duties for both parties. In 5 years, we will revisit the arrangement." "This is highly irregular," King Voron said. "So is marrying a human," Helena replied. "These are new times, Father. We must adapt." The king looked at Jake with an expression that was hard to read. "Very well. The union is approved, pending the contract negotiations. Captain Morrison, you have 3 days to finalize the terms with my daughter. Then, the bonding ceremony will take place." Jake felt the weight of what he had just agreed to settle over him. 3 days to negotiate a marriage contract with an alien princess. 3 days before his entire life changed forever. As the council dismissed, Helena approached him one more time. "You're either very brave or very foolish," she said. "Probably both," Jake admitted. She almost smiled. "We should meet tomorrow to discuss the contract. Bring your ambassador when she arrives. This will require careful wording." "Agreed." Helena turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you could have refused. You could have caused a diplomatic incident and gone home. But you chose to try to make this work. That shows character. Or desperation," Jake said. This time she did smile. Just a little. "Perhaps. We'll see." As she walked away, Katie appeared at Jake's side. "Well," she said, "you're getting married." "Apparently," Jake replied, still trying to process everything. "To an alien warrior princess. Yes. This is going to be one hell of a story to tell your grandkids." Jake laughed despite himself. "Assuming I survive the wedding, one step at a time," Katie said, patting his shoulder. "One step at a time." Ambassador Lauren Mitchell arrived the next morning, and she brought an entire legal team with her. Jake had never been so grateful to see other humans in his life. They spent hours going over the marriage contract, examining every word in both English and Calvari to make sure nothing was lost in translation. "This is actually quite fair," Lauren said after reading through the latest draft. She was a sharp woman in her 50s, with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Princess Helena is giving you more freedom than most royal consorts receive. You'll maintain your rank in the Defense Corps, though you'll be on permanent diplomatic assignment. You'll have your own quarters in the palace and your own staff. And the 5-year review clause is unprecedented." "What about children?" Jake asked. It was a question that had been bothering him since this whole mess started. Lauren's expression became serious. "That's addressed in Section 12. Any children born of the union would be considered part of the royal line. But you would have equal rights as a parent. However, the contract states that children are not required. It's entirely up to you and Helena to decide." Jake felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. At least, that pressure wasn't immediate. "There's one more thing," Lauren continued. "Before the wedding can proceed, you need to complete the trial of worthiness. It's a Calvari tradition for anyone marrying into the royal family." "What kind of trial?" Katie asked. She had been sitting quietly in the corner, taking notes. "Several tests designed to prove you can stand beside a Calvari warrior," Lauren explained. "Combat, strategy, and a ritual hunt." Princess Helena completed similar trials when she came of age. Jake sighed. "Of course there are trials. Why would anything about this be simple?" The trials began the next day. Jake stood in a training arena, facing the Royal Guard's champion. The Calvari warrior was massive, easily 8 feet tall and covered in muscle. He carried a staff that looked like it could crack bones with a single hit. "The rules are simple," Prince Dalvin explained from the sidelines. "First one to yield or fall unconscious loses. No permanent injuries allowed." "Comforting," Jake muttered. The fight began. The champion came at Jake with brutal efficiency, his staff whistling through the air. Jake dodged, rolled, and tried to find an opening. The problem was that the Calvari was faster than he looked. Every time Jake thought he saw a weakness, the champion was already moving to cover it. Jake took a hit to the ribs that knocked the wind out of him. Then another to his shoulder. He was losing, and everyone watching knew it. But Jake had learned something during his years in combat. You didn't always win by being stronger or faster. Sometimes, you won by being smarter. He stopped trying to match the champion's strength and started watching his patterns. The Calvari was skilled, but he had habits. He always struck high before going low. He always planted his left foot a certain way before a spinning attack. Jake waited for his moment. When it came, he moved. Instead of dodging away from the staff, he stepped inside the champion's reach. He grabbed the staff with both hands and used the champion's own momentum to throw him off balance. Then he swept the Calvari's legs out from under him, The champion fell hard. Jake pressed his advantage, keeping the staff pinned and his knee on the champion's chest. "Yield," Jake said. The champion looked surprised, then laughed. "I yield. Well fought, human." The crowd watching erupted in cheers. Jake helped the champion to his feet, both of them breathing hard. Princess Helena stepped forward. She had been watching from the royal viewing area. "Impressive," she said. "You used strategy over strength. That's wise." "I learned a long time ago that I can't outmuscle everyone," Jake replied. "So, I have to outthink them. A good lesson." Helena gestured to the arena exit. "Rest now. The next trial is tomorrow." The strategy trial turned out to be a complex war game involving moving pieces on a three-dimensional board. Jake was given control of a small fleet and told to defend a system against a larger attacking force. He had 2 hours to plan and execute his defense. Jake studied the board carefully. The attacking force was larger, but they had to come through a narrow jump point. He positioned his ships to create a gauntlet, forcing the enemy to run through concentrated fire. Then he used smaller ships to lay mines at the jump point exit. When the simulation ran, his defense held. The enemy lost more than half their ships trying to break through. The remaining forces retreated. The council observers nodded in approval. Several of them looked surprised that a human could grasp Kelvari military tactics so quickly. "Your people are not so different from ours," one elder commented. "You understand warfare." "Unfortunately, yes," Jake agreed. The final trial was the ritual hunt. Jake was taken to a preserve on the outskirts of the capital, given primitive weapons, and told to track and kill a Velkaron beast. The creature was supposedly one of the most dangerous predators on the planet. "Just remember," Dalvin said before Jake entered the preserve. "The beast hunts by scent and sound. Move quietly and stay downwind." Katie handed Jake a canteen. "Please don't get eaten. I don't want to explain that to Admiral Bennett." "I'll do my best," Jake promised. The preserve was dense with strange alien vegetation. Trees with silver bark reached toward a purple sky. Jake moved carefully, using skills he had learned during survival training. The weapons he had been given were simple: a spear, a knife, and a net. He found tracks after an hour of searching. The Velkaran beast had claws the size of his hand and left deep gouges in the earth. Jake followed the trail, moving slowly and keeping to cover. He found the beast drinking at a stream. It was huge, covered in dark scales, with multiple eyes and a mouth full of razor teeth. Jake's heart pounded as he studied it. A frontal attack would be suicide. He needed to be smart. He spent 30 minutes setting up his trap. He used the net to create a snare hidden under leaves. Then, he positioned himself upwind and made noise. The beast's head snapped up, all its eyes focusing in his direction. Jake ran. The beast chased him, crashing through the undergrowth with terrifying speed. Jake led it straight toward his trap. At the last second, he dove to the side. The beast's leg caught in the net. It stumbled and fell. Jake didn't hesitate. He drove the spear into the creature's throat with all his strength. The beast thrashed once, twice, then went still. Jake sat down hard, shaking from adrenaline. He had done it. When he returned to the palace carrying proof of his kill, the entire court was waiting. News of his success had spread quickly. Warriors nodded in respect. Even the council elders looked impressed. Princess Helena met him at the entrance. She looked at the blood on his clothes and the exhaustion on his face. "You survived." "And barely," Jake admitted, "but you survived. And you used intelligence over brute force again." She paused. "You're not what I expected, Jake Morrison." It was the first time she had used his first name. Jake noticed. "What did you expect?" he asked. "Someone who would fail. Someone I could dismiss as weak." Helena's expression was hard to read. "But you're not weak. You're just different. Maybe that's what this kingdom needs." The wedding was scheduled for the next day. Jake barely slept that night, his mind racing with everything that was about to happen. He had signed the contract. He had passed the trials. Now there was nothing left but the ceremony itself. Katie helped him dress in the morning. The ceremonial outfit was a blend of Calvari and human military styles. It felt strange, but not uncomfortable. "How are you feeling?" Katie asked. "Terrified," Jake said honestly. "I'm about to marry someone I barely know. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing," Katie said. "This alliance is important, and Helena seems like she'll be a good partner, once you both figure out how this works." "I hope you're right." The ceremony took place in the Palace Amphitheater. Thousands of people gathered to watch. Representatives from dozens of worlds attended, including a full delegation from Earth. Admiral Bennett was there, looking both proud and slightly confused by the whole situation. Jake stood at the center of the amphitheater, waiting. Then, the music began. A haunting melody that made his skin prickle. Princess Helena entered from the far side, and Jake's breath caught. She wore armor made of silver and blue metal that seemed to glow from within. Her hair was bound in intricate braids, and her face was painted with the traditional markings of a Calvari bride. She looked like a warrior goddess, stepping out of legend. She walked to the center and stood facing Jake. The priest began the ceremony, speaking in Calvari first, then in English, for the human guests. "We gather to witness the union of Princess Helena, heir to the Calvari throne, and Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. This bond is formed in honor, sealed in blood, and will be joined in spirit." Jake and Helena exchanged vows. Helena spoke first in Calvari, then repeated her words in English. "I pledge my honor to you. I will stand beside you in war and peace. I will respect your strength and value your counsel. This, I swear, before my people and the stars." Jake's turn. His voice was steady despite his nerves. "I pledge my honor to you. I will stand beside you in war and peace. I will respect your strength and value your counsel. This I swear before your people and mine." The priest brought forth a small crystal, different from the ones that had been destroyed. "The bonding crystal will link your life forces. You will feel each other's emotions, share each other's pain and joy. This connection cannot be broken, except by death." Jake had known this was coming, but the reality of it made his heart race. A permanent mental connection with Helena. There would be no hiding his feelings from her, no privacy in his own mind. Helena met his eyes. He saw the same uncertainty there that he felt. They were both taking a leap of faith. The priest placed the crystal between them. "Join hands." Jake and Helena reached out, their hands meeting over the crystal. The moment they touched, Jake felt something surge through him. It was like electricity, but warmer, deeper. He could suddenly sense Helena in his mind, not her thoughts exactly, but her emotions. He felt her fierce determination, her hidden fear, her hope that this crazy plan might work, and he realized she could feel his emotions too. His terror and his determination, his respect for her, and his hope for their future. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, maybe even the beginning of trust. The priest spoke again. "The bond is formed. Let all who witness know that these two are now one before the law and the stars." The amphitheater erupted in cheers. Jake and Helena stood together, still holding hands, connected by something neither of them fully understood. Jake Morrison had come to an alien world as a soldier. He was leaving as a prince, bound to a warrior queen by law and by something deeper than law. Whatever happened next, his life would never be the same. Helena squeezed his hand gently. Through their new connection, he felt her message clearly. "We'll figure this out together." Jake squeezed back. Yes, they would. The first week of marriage was strange. Jake moved into the royal quarters, a vast suite of rooms that felt more like a small house than an apartment. True to their agreement, Helena had given him his own private chambers connected to hers by a shared sitting room. They could be together when needed, but also have space apart. The mental connection took getting used to. Jake couldn't read Helena's thoughts, but he always knew what she was feeling. When she was angry at a council meeting, he felt it like heat in his chest. When she was pleased with training results, he felt a warmth spread through him. It was invasive and intimate at the same time. "Does it ever get easier?" Jake asked Katie over breakfast one morning. She had stayed on Kelvar Prime as part of the human diplomatic team. "I have no idea," Katie admitted. "You're the first human to bond with a Kelvari royal. You're writing the manual as you go." Jake stirred his tea, which was actually starting to grow on him despite its weird taste. "I can feel when she's stressed. It's like a constant buzz in the back of my mind. The council is pushing her to make decisions about the succession, to name heirs, to prove herself worthy of the throne." "That's a lot of pressure," Katie observed. "It is." Jake looked out the window at the floating gardens. "I'm trying to help, but I don't always know how. I'm still learning the political landscape here." What Jake didn't say was that he was also starting to feel something else through the bond. Respect. Maybe even affection. Helena was brilliant and fierce, but she also carried the weight of her entire kingdom on her shoulders. She worked harder than anyone Jake had ever met, and she never complained about it. The real test came 3 weeks after the wedding. Jake was in a strategy meeting with Kelvari military leaders, learning their defense systems, when alarms started blaring throughout the palace. Helena burst into the room, already in full armor. "We're under attack," she said. "The Draxian Collective has launched an assault on one of our border colonies. 3 worlds are reporting enemy ships." Jake was on his feet instantly. "How many ships?" "Preliminary reports say at least 50 capital ships, with fighter support." Helena's jaw was tight. "It's a major offensive. They must have been planning this for months." One of the Kelvari generals spoke up. "Princess, we need to mobilize the fleet. We should send everything we have." "Round. That would leave the core worlds undefended," another general argued. "We need to be strategic." Jake studied the tactical display that had appeared in the center of the room. The Draxian fleet was advancing on 3 separate fronts, trying to divide the Kelvari forces. It was a smart strategy, but it had weaknesses. "What are our human forces doing in this sector?" Jake asked. Helena looked at him. "Admiral Bennett has a task force nearby. 8 ships. That's not enough to stop a fleet this size," the first general said dismissively. "Not alone," Jake agreed. "But combined with your forces, we could hit them hard." He pointed at the display. "The Draxian fleet is spread thin. They're trying to attack everywhere at once, which means they're weak everywhere. If we combine forces and strike at their center formation here, we can cut their fleet in half." The generals looked skeptical, but Helena was studying the display with interest. "Explain." Jake outlined his plan. Human ships were faster and had better long-range weapons. Kelvari ships were tougher and better in close combat. By using human ships to break the enemy formation and Kelvari ships to finish them off, they could maximize both strengths. "It could work," Helena said slowly. "But it requires perfect coordination between our forces. That's never been done before." "Then it's time to try something new," Jake replied. Helena met his eyes. Through their bond, he felt her making a decision. "Contact Admiral Bennett. Tell him we're forming a joint task force. I'll lead the Kelvari fleet. Captain Morrison will coordinate overall strategy." Several generals objected immediately. "Princess, you can't put a human in charge of our fleet." "I'm not," Helena said firmly. "I'm in command of Kelvari forces. Admiral Bennett commands human forces. Jake coordinates between us. It's a partnership." The word hung in the air. Partnership. Just like their marriage. 6 hours later, Jake stood on the bridge of Helena's flagship, the Pride of Kelvar. It felt strange wearing both his Terran uniform and the ceremonial sash that marked him as royal consort. But both navies had agreed to the arrangement, mostly because there was no time for anything else. Admiral Bennett's face appeared on the main screen. Captain Morrison. Or should I say, Prince Morrison. Jake is fine, sir, Jake replied. Are your ships in position? We are. 8 ships against 50. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Jake admitted. Stand by for coordinates. The combined fleet moved into position. Jake had positioned the human ships in a spearhead formation, designed to punch through the center of the Draxian line. The Kelvari ships hung back in 2 wings, ready to sweep in once the formation broke. Helena stood beside him on the bridge, her presence calm and steady. Are you sure about this? She asked quietly. No, Jake said honestly. But it's our best chance. Through their bond, he felt her trust. It steadied him. All ships, Jake announced. Execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The human ships surged forward, their weapons blazing. Missiles and energy beams lanced through space, hammering the Draxian center line. The enemy ships tried to adjust, but they were too spread out. The human ships punched through like a knife through paper. Now, Helena commanded. Wings advance. The Kelvari ships swept in from both sides, catching the Draxian fleet in a pincer. With their formation broken, and enemies on 3 sides, the Draxian ships began to falter. Some tried to retreat. Others fought desperately but were overwhelmed. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, the Draxian fleet was scattered and broken. 20 enemy ships destroyed, 15 captured, and the rest fleeing back to their territory. Jake watched the tactical display, barely believing it had worked. They had won. The combined fleet had actually won. Helena turned to him, her eyes bright with victory. We did, Jake agreed. And in that moment, something shifted between them. They had gone into battle together, trusted each other completely, and emerged victorious. The bond between them felt stronger, more real. When they returned to Kelvar Prime, they were greeted as heroes. The entire capital celebrated the victory. It was the first time human and Kelvari forces had fought side by side, and the results had exceeded everyone's expectations. King Voran summoned them both to a private meeting. The king looked older than Jake remembered, but his eyes were sharp. You have proven yourselves, Voran said. Helena, you led our forces with wisdom and courage. Jake, you showed that humans and Kelvari can fight together as one. You have earned your place in this family. Helena bowed. Thank you, Father. There is more to discuss, Voran continued. My health is failing. The council knows this, as do the people. I will not last another year. I will not last another year. Voran Y will not last another year. Helena's hand tightened on her sword. Through the bond, Jake felt her fear. I'm sorry, Jake said quietly. Don't be, Voran replied. I have lived a long life, but I need to know that the kingdom will be in good hands. Helena, I am formally naming you as my heir. When I die, you will become queen. Father, I'm ready, Helena said. I know you are. Voran looked at Jake. And you, Prince Consort, will you stand beside her? Will you help her rule? Jake didn't hesitate. I will. Then, I am content. Voran stood slowly. I will announce the succession tomorrow. Prepare yourselves. After they left the king's chambers, Jake and Helena walked through the palace gardens in silence. The weight of what was coming settled over them both. You're going to be queen, Jake said finally. I am. Helena stopped walking and turned to face him. This wasn't what you signed up for. The contract said 5 years as a consort, not a lifetime as the husband of a queen. Jake looked at her. Really looked at her. In the past few weeks, he had learned so much about Helena. Her dedication to her people, her fierce loyalty, her hidden fears, and her stubborn hope. He had seen her lead armies and comfort children. He had fought beside her and watched her navigate impossible political situations, and he realized something that surprised him. He didn't want to leave. "I think we can renegotiate the contract," Jake said. Helena's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that this partnership is working. We're good together. You make me better, and I like to think I help you too." Jake took her hand. "I'm not asking for some grand love story, but I am asking if you want to try making this marriage real. Not just for politics, but because we choose it." Through their bond, he felt Helena's shock, then her hope, then something warm that might have been joy. "You would stay?" she asked. "Even after the 5 years?" "I would stay," Jake confirmed. "If you want me to." Helena was quiet for a long moment. Then she squeezed his hand. 6 months later, King Voron passed peacefully in his sleep. The kingdom mourned, but they also looked forward with hope. Princess Helena became Queen Helena in a ceremony attended by representatives from 100 worlds. Jake stood beside her. No longer just a consort forced into marriage by ancient law, but a true partner. The Terran Federation and the Kelvary Empire signed a formal military alliance, with Jake serving as the liaison between the two governments. His unique position allowed him to bridge cultural gaps and facilitate cooperation in ways that had never been possible before. Katie was promoted to Earth's permanent ambassador to Kelvar Prime. She had a front-row seat to watch Jake and Helena's relationship grow from a reluctant partnership into something deeper. "You know," Katie said to Jake one evening, "when you first told me you were being forced to marry an alien princess, I thought your career was over." Jake laughed. "So did I. But instead, you helped forge the most important alliance in the sector." Katie smiled. "Not bad for someone who just wanted to attend a wedding." "It's been quite a journey," Jake admitted. He looked across the room to where Helena was discussing something with Prince Dalvin. She caught his eye and smiled. Through their bond, he felt her contentment. They had built something real together. A partnership based on respect, trust, and yes, affection, maybe even love, though neither of them had said the word yet. They had time for that. "Do you ever regret it?" Katie asked. "Staying here instead of going home?" Jake thought about Earth, about the life he had left behind. Then, he thought about Helena, about the kingdom they were building together, about the difference they were making. "No," he said. "I don't regret it at all. This is home now." Later that night, Jake and Helena stood together on their balcony, watching the twin moons rise over Kelvar Prime. The city below sparkled with lights. "I've been thinking about the succession," Helena said quietly. "The council will want us to have an heir eventually." "Eventually," Jake agreed. "But there's no rush. We have time to figure everything out." "We do." Helena leaned against him, and Jake put his arm around her. "Thank you, Jake." "For what?" "For giving this a chance. For seeing past the forced marriage to what we could build together." She looked up at him. "I never thought I could have this. A partner who respects me. Someone I can trust completely." "Same here," Jake said. "I thought marriage would be a cage, but with you, it feels like freedom." They stood together in comfortable silence, two warriors from different worlds who had found common ground. What had started as an accident, a forced union born of ancient law and broken crystals, had become something neither of them had expected. Jake Morrison had attended an alien wedding as a guest. He had ended up married to the king's eldest daughter, and somehow, impossibly, he had found exactly where he belonged. The galaxy was changing. Humans and Kelvari working together, learning from each other, building a future neither species could achieve alone, and at the center of it all stood a warrior queen and her human prince, bound by more than law or duty. They were bound by choice. And that made all the difference.